Hey guitar fanatics, do you ever find yourself stuck in a rut and getting bored with the same old pentatonic blues licks that you've played a million times? Are you looking for a little secret sauce that you could add to your licks to make them sound fresh and exciting? Well, you're in luck today because I'm going to show you a simple technique that's going to make your licks not only sound more sophisticated and polished, but it's going to give you a great way to connect positions all over the neck. You're going to be able to weave in and out of chord changes like a boss. This is going to be a lot of fun, and if you get this technique down, it's going to allow you to create countless great sounding licks. So let's get into it. Now, if you're just getting into lead playing and blues specifically, I do have an extensive course available on mastering pentatonic scales and using them to create blues licks. The link is in the description below, as is a link to my Patreon page where we get much more in depth on the topics we discuss here on YouTube. So have you ever heard an accomplished blues guitarist play something like this? It's really easy to get stuck just playing blues licks that are all minor pentatonic, or sometimes you throw in the blues scale here and there. I know I fall into this trap. And then you hear a great player use these little chromatic double stops or chordal passages to add spice to a lick or move between chords. And it's always like, where did that come from? The theory behind what's going on there is not too hard to understand. So we're going to touch on that, and then we're going to distill it down and make it even simpler yet. So a quick theory review. A typical simple 12-bar blues is played over 3 chords, and those chords are usually 3 dominant 7 chords. In the key of A, we'd call A7 the 1 chord, and then we'd move up a 4th from A to D. We have D7, and then up to the 5th of A, which is E, and we have E7. Going a little deeper, the mode that works over dominant 7 chords is the Mixolydian mode, which we could look at as the major scale with a flat 7. Now, Mixolydian works perfectly over dominant 7 chords because both the scale and the chord have major 3rd and a flat 7. Here's what Mixolydian mode sounds like over each chord. But here's the problem with that. You don't hear great blues players doing a lot of scale runs. Instead, great blues licks are made up of slick combinations of intervals and great phrasing that accentuates the really important notes of the chords. In other words, we need to find a way to play the notes of the Mixolydian mode without just running the scale up and down. And here it is. Here's the gold. If we take the triad of any one of the 3 chords in our blues and the triad a whole step below, so for A we'd have A and G, for D we'd have D and C, and for E we'd have E and D, the notes of each of those triad pairs, as they're called, give us 6 of the 7 notes of Mixolydian mode. For instance, A Mixolydian has the notes A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, and G. Well, the A and G triad pairs, they have the notes A, C, E, and G, B, D. So the only note we're missing from A Mixolydian is F sharp. And it works the same way over the other 2 chords. And we can start our journey into making up cool licks by playing the note of each triad individually. And we would get this sound over E7, this sound over D, and this sound over A7. And we can actually double the amount of notes at our disposal by playing another set of triad pairs. These would be the relative minor chords of our major triad pairs. So over A, in addition to playing A and G, we can also play F sharp minor and E minor. And we get every note of A Mixolydian but the D note. And once again, that little system would work over the other two chords in our blues. Check out how I can play a harmonized version of A Mixolydian with just those four triads on the top three strings. On the high E string, A Mixolydian would have the note A, G, F sharp, E, D, C sharp, B, A, G, F sharp, and E. And I can play right down the scale with A, G, F sharp minor, E minor, G, F sharp minor, E minor, A, G, F sharp minor, and E minor. So, okay, Charlie, the notes of the triad pairs, they sound great over a dominant 7 chord. But how do we turn triads into cool blues licks? Well, if you've listened to much blues at all, you've probably heard something like this. So what was I doing there? I was simply moving chromatically between a triad pair over each chord. Here's A7, and we go F sharp minor to E minor. So I was using inversions of the two minor triads that work over those chords. Check out Stevie Ray Vaughan's song Empty Arms if you want to hear how he used this technique to create a killer sounding blues riff. And it sounds great if we start to incorporate these little chords into our more standard single note blues licks. Check out this little line over an A7 chord. Something that sounds equally great and is probably usable in more situations is to play double stops that are based on these triads we just looked at. All we have to do is pick 2 notes of each triad. Still playing just the shapes on the G, B, and high E strings, we could pick notes of the triads that are on the E and G strings. Check this out. Or we could switch it up and play the 2 notes of the triads that just fall on the high E and B like this. Now there are so many ways we could go with this. How about we have some fun and take a look at a couple of licks that I stole from a pair of blues legends. The first one being none other than Stevie Ray Vaughan. Now over A7, we've said we could play F sharp minor and walk it chromatically down to E minor. Let's go up to the 14th fret. We're gonna play a little shape. We're gonna play the 14th fret on the E, B, and G strings. That's F sharp minor, and just walk it down to E minor. And for the Stevie lick, we're gonna play the 3 single notes on each string in descending order. And I've heard Stevie play a variation of this lick over the ending of a tune. I've also heard him use it over the 5 chord going to the 4. It's a great little lick. All we did was take a triad pair, connect it chromatically, and play the notes individually. Let's try another lick. And the first part of this lick is sort of a signature move of the great English blues guitarist Matt Schofield. What Matt does is play the lower triad of the major triad pair. So over A7, he'd play a G major triad, and he uses this familiar shape. We've got G, B, and D at frets 5, 4, and 3 of the D, G, and B strings. And we sweep up that shape, And then after playing that D, we drop down into C sharp, which is the major third of A, and play some bluesy Mixolydian ideas from there. We could even throw in a little chromatic double stop move, and even our minor triads. This idea works great over all three chords. I'm going to fire up the backing track and play a version of that lick over each of the three chords of our blues. Here we go. Now here's a lick I came up with using F sharp minor and E minor triads on the high E, B, and G string, and we're going to throw in the ninth also. We're going to play frets 12 and 9 on the high E, 10 on the B string, frets 11, 9 on the G string. We're going to drop down 2 frets. We're going to play the mirror image of that lick, ascending. That's E minor. And we're going to finish that off with a descending blues lick, and then a downward chromatic move of our minor triads on the B, G, and D string. And here's the whole lick slowly. Check it out. Here it is again. So I hope you're starting to see and hear the potential of this concept, which is to take a pair of triads that gives us a Mixolydian tonality and mix up the way that we play them. We've used the whole triad, we've used double stops, and we've turned these triads into some hip single note lines. One of the things I mentioned in the intro is how you could use these little chromatic movements to weave in and out of chords smoothly, and I want to get into that before we get out of here today. Now, there are some classic intro licks that use our chromatic moves between the triad pairs that we've been talking about. How about this one? For the intro to a slow blues in A, we could play the double stop at fret 2 of the G and B strings, which is 2 notes of A major, the D and B at frets 3 and 4, and move that up chromatically to frets 5 and 6. Then we're going to hit the A at the 5th fret of the E string, and then we're going to play down from F sharp minor to E minor with our shape on the D, G, and B strings. Now, move that pattern up to start on the 7th fret, and we can use that exact passage over D7. So we'd have A7 to D7 in the first couple of bars of a quick change blues. Here's this lick over D7. Let's hear that just quickly over a backing track. Now this is a classic blues move, and it illustrates what I meant by using these licks to move in and out of chord changes. The licks that we just played starts on the 4th beat of the measure leading into the chord we're going to be playing over. So we're anticipating the next chord, and we're using these little licks to play through the chord change, and it sounds so smooth and professional, like we're in full control melodically and ahead of the game, so to speak. Over the last 4 measures of that blues in A, where we have a bar of E7, D7, and then our turnaround, we could play something like this. Notice again, we anticipate each chord change, starting our new line on the 4th beat of the measure leading into the chord change. Now, if you want to get into deeper discussions of these topics like we discuss on YouTube, come on over and check out my Patreon page. In the meantime, here's another video about how to double the amount of blues licks you already know with one simple move. Check it out, and I will see you soon.